Hello, students. This is your Human Impact on Land Resources reading. You should be taking your notes in your binder page. So first chunk of notes is talking about mining. So first of all, what is mining? Well, we have land resources that are found way underground, and we get those resources by digging up large areas of Earth's surface. That is what mining is. Some of the things that we dig up are things like iron, aluminum, copper, sand, gravel, and limestone. And these land resources are important, but it's important also that we find a way to get them that doesn't harm our environment. So what negative effects does mining have on the environment? Mining has a huge impact on our surface. So our groundwater can get polluted. Natural habitats of various animals and things can be destroyed or disturbed. Our air quality can be impacted. Then surface mining, it creates waste rock and can release toxic elements into the air and the water. When we do mountaintop removal, that destroys the shape of the land and it kills the plants and animals living there. And then that loss of topsoil we need for the plants to grow back. So that's also a big deal with mountaintop removal. And then underground mining also creates waste rock on the surface and pollutes our water. So there's a lot of different negative effects from mining. So here are a couple of pictures of different types of mining. So here is a underground or surface, I'm not sure which, mining area. So you can see kind of what impact it's had on the area. This is a mountaintop removal. That's why it's flat here. That used to be a mountain of some kind. And you can notice that there's nothing growing up here because there's no more topsoil for things to grow in. This is an example of some waste rock being piled up. That is stuff that they pulled from underground and is now on the surface. And then here is some pollution that you can see coming from a mine that's over on this side of the river here, causing this kind of rusty color water because of all of the different things that are now getting washed off of this exposed rock into our water. If you want to watch this video, it'll also be posted in your Schoology class. So now what can we do to reduce the negative effects of mining? So reclamation is one thing we can do, and that restores the land to its original contours, its original shape, and requires that mining companies replant the vegetation, so the plants and things, that they destroyed. You could also use the waste rock, the rock we didn't purposefully mine, for building projects. There are some new low-impact mining techniques that could be used. Mining companies can treat the contaminated water and soil so that it can be reused as opposed to having to remove it. And then just in general, stop any illegal mining. That's where we're not being overseen and following the different things to protect our environment. All right, you can pause there if you need to finish chunk 1 of your notes. But now we're going to go on to chunk number 2, agriculture, aka farming. So what are the negative effects of pesticides and fertilizers on our environment? So first of all, pesticides are chemicals applied to farm fields to control weeds, insects, and fungi. These are important because they help to boost our food production, meaning we get more food out of it, because they control those organisms that destroy our crops. Now, some of the negative things, they can accumulate in organisms high in the food chain, potentially harming or killing them. Some of these pesticides also kill beneficial insects, things we need for the plants. Some also kill the decomposers, the things that break down the plant and animal matter when they're dead. So our topsoil becomes less fertile because those things aren't getting added back into our soil. Insects can become resistant to these pesticides, and then more pesticides are needed to deal with them. And finally, wind and rain can move those pesticides into water, polluting it, basically putting it in places we didn't want it to be. Fertilizers provide nutrients like nitrogen, phosphate, potassium, etc. to help crops grow. But just like pesticides, they can contaminate the water through the same methods, which can cause different bad things to grow more in there. Like if you've heard of an algae bloom, that's often caused by fertilizers. So describe each agricultural practice and how it helps conserve the environment. So a little bit of background first before we get into the 3 practices. Vegetation and crops need nutrients from our topsoil. It takes thousands of years for that topsoil to form, so once it's lost, it's really hard to replace. Plant roots hold the soil in place, so when we plow fields and get rid of all of those roots and things, there's no more plant roots, so the soil can just be washed away by the rain, which is a big problem because we need that topsoil. All right, so our three types. Our first one is contour farming. This is done on hillsides that are likely to have erosion, which is when the water is washing things away. So crops planted with the shape of the earth is what contour farming is. And this slows that runoff. It helps to prevent like our soil from getting washed away in the rain. So the picture there is contour farming. And in this case, the different colors are caused by two different plants, alfalfa and corn. So you can see based on those curves kind of how it's following where our earth is curving. So describe the next one, no-till farming. So this is where farmers leave the unused part of crops in the field instead of plowing them. That lets them naturally decay and returns the nutrients back to the soil. So if you think, for example, about corn, we eat the corn cob. We pick that part and that's what we use, but the rest of the corn stalk doesn't get used for anything. So in this case, farmers would just kind of mow it down and leave all of the parts of it there to return those nutrients into the soil. And then finally, crop rotation. This is where they plant different crops in the same field each year. So they might do alfalfa one year, corn the next, winter wheat the next. This maintains the soil's nutrient balance, which means that farmers don't need to use as much fertilizers. It also reduces the number of crop-specific pests, since it's not always the same thing or the thing that pest wants to eat in that field. So that means fewer pesticides are needed. And doing this helps because different plants take different nutrients out of the soil and give different nutrients back into the soil. So if you pick the right rotation, you can keep those nutrients kind of where they should be. And again, if you'd like to watch this video, it'll also be posted. Our final chunk of notes. So if you need to pause to finish up chunk 2, go ahead and do that. But we're going to go into our last chunk, chunk 3, talking about solid waste. So what are some of the issues associated with solid waste disposal? First of all, each person in the US makes an average of 2 kilograms of solid waste a day. That's about 5 pounds of waste. And there's no away when you throw something away. It has to go somewhere. So here is a graph showing the total waste generated in 2013 and kind of what types of things were waste. This is all before recycling. So you might notice that a lot of the things listed here are things that could be recycled. So modern landfills are lined with clay or plastic so that things as our trash kind of decomposes, they don't leak into the soil because that could be a big issue and contaminate it. And then they are covered with dirt to prevent the trash from like blowing around in the wind. As our trash breaks down, it releases gas like methane, which gets released into the atmosphere using vents. And if you remember, we learned about methane, that is a big contributor to climate change. That's one of our greenhouse gases. Improper disposal of trash can contaminate the land and the water, nasty things leaking into those. And also we have a lot of trash. And a bunch of the items that get thrown away could be reused, they could be recycled, or they could be donated instead of ending up in a landfill. So that's why it's really important that we pick the right things to throw away and the right things to reuse or recycle. Wish cycling is when people put things in the recycling bin, hope that it's going to be recycled. But when there's too much trash in the recycling dumpster, the entire thing just gets added to the landfill. So putting things in that you hope would get recycled is actually not very helpful. You need to know what things can and cannot get recycled. All right, that is it for our notes. So go ahead and finish those up on your binder page. Feel free to rewind to sections of the notes if you missed something and ask your teacher if you have any more questions.